What's going on, FE Nation? Happy Tuesday, and welcome to the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS live stream. I am your host, James Grande. I am joined by the national champion himself, Sean Mitchell, who saw Joe Burrows puff on his winning cigar after your Tigers took home the Natty last night. You also did the playbook today, so you've been on a roll. Been on a high since last night, so I know you're feeling good about the playbook, Sean. 6 games. How are we feeling about the slate, brother?
I like it. Obviously, we've got a lot of the injury news that we were waiting for. Ricky Rubio is out. Kevin Love is out. That's obviously going to open up a little bit of value in some spots. Really only waiting on the Memphis Grizzlies. They have a couple guys that we're kind of waiting on, Brandon Clark, Kyle Anderson, and Jay Crowder. Other than that, I really like the slate. We got some big totals, and obviously we've got some really, really big names on this slate that we are going to love to talk about. So,
speaking of those Memphis guys, they did all participate in shoot around this morning. Right. So take that for what it's worth. A lot of people think that means they're going to play. It could just mean they tried to practice this morning and they are. They weren't feeling it. So we will be awaiting that news. 8 o'clock. So, an hour, actually only half an hour after Rush Lock, since this is a 6:30 Central, but 7:30 Eastern time slate lock. Some of the totals you did mention, I think, are worth noting. Phoenix, Atlanta, 230.5. Phoenix, 3.5 point favorites on the road. 240.5. It's risen. In Houston, Memphis, it started at 238. It is now 240.5. That is impossible to ignore. I mean, 2 fast-paced teams, 2 teams that are scoring. Memphis playing really well. And, we mentioned injury news. There's no Russell Westbrook. Let's bury the lead there. No Russell Westbrook means all the James Harden. Milwaukee, New York, and Cleveland Clippers have massive spreads. The Milwaukee Bucks are 16.5 point favorites at home against the Knicks, and the Clippers are 15.5 point favorites against the Cavs. And you mentioned the Cavs are sans Kevin Love, so They could be in serious trouble there. But those are mostly the notable totals. Every total on the board, though, tonight, Sean, is over 220. So there is going to be a lot of scoring. But, Sean, as we do every live stream, let's hop into the players, starting with the point guards. Where we find, there's 2 elite players at point guard. It's Luka Doncic and it's Trae Young. Right. And I think, we were talking about it a little before we hopped on air. You're a big Luka guy tonight, and it's really hard not to. But once you found out Ricky Rubio was ruled out, you kind of seemed a little more interested in Trae Young. So now that you know what we know, right? We know Ricky Rubio's out. Do you still rank Luka 1, Trae 2, or is that changed since the news came out?
It's not going to change. Luka is clear-cut number 1 for me. I mean, don't get me wrong. Trae is not very far behind. But Luka has just completely dominated this matchup. In 2 games already against Golden State, he's averaging 33 points, 11 rebounds, 13 assists with almost a 39% usage rate. So there's just absolutely no way, especially if Kristaps is out, which we expect him to be. It looks like they're going to try to bring him back tomorrow maybe. He's just averaging just shy of a triple-double in all of his road games this season. There's just, he's my pay-up. I'm going with Luka. I just feel like he is going to garner a lot more ownership, I guess more usage than even Harden. I mean, I know Harden sees like a 46% usage rate, but, they got Eric Gordon back now. He's going to be starting. Capella is back. So they do have pieces back. So I do think that Luka, for me, is going to be my pay-up. I do like Trae Young quite a bit, though. As we talked about, it's a really high total, second highest on the board. It's a great matchup against Eli Kobo now. Of course, they're without Ricky Rubio. I think Trae Young could kind of fall through the cracks a little bit with just the big names that are on the slate already and him being around that 10K mark. You might get a low-owned Trae Young. Really good spot here at home against the Phoenix team that we know is definitely going to struggle against that spot, and his usage rate is just through the roof as well. So I think he definitely has 60-plus upside. It's a great spot, fast-paced game. Yeah.
Something to mention about Luka's performances against Golden State, he has done that in 27 minutes. So if we get a full complement of Luka tonight, Look out. Look out. I mean, that is so scary.
I just feel like, I mean, he put up 77.5 on him last game. I just feel like he could easily be an 80-pointer as well. I know Harden is in that same range, but everybody is going to be flooding to Harden. I totally get why. And if you know me, just like you know me, I would much rather not want to play the chalkier situations, even though he has massive, massive upside. We know that. That is
the tournament. That is tournament bred and born Sean Mitchell right there. Let's move down the rest of the point guard position where D'Angelo Russell appears in your playbook, John Morant appears in your playbook, Eric Bledsoe, who are kind of all in this mid-tier. Why don't you assess those three guys for us, Sean?
Yeah, it's definitely D'Angelo. Pretty clear at the top of those three. Obviously, Morant's in a great spot against Houston. It's going to be a massive pace game. We know that these two teams run in the top 10 of pace. I just really like this Dallas and Golden State game as well. I mean, obviously, I'm playing Luka. Obviously, DAR is one that I would love to run it back with if I'm going to be stacking that game. He's going to definitely be a piece I'm going to have. He's played 34 minutes a game over his last three, averaging 31.1% usage. And he's gone for 50 or more in his last two on DraftKings. Those three-pointers, they pay really big dividends on DraftKings. And I think he's a little bit more expensive on DraftKings for that reason. But nonetheless, he's taken 24 more field goal attempts in his last three. He's getting back to where he was before he got injured. So I'm definitely all in on D'Angelo Russell, especially on DraftKings. And then John Morant, I think Eric Bledsoe, seemingly enough, is probably going to be zero owned. And he's been playing really well. I mean, 40 or more fantasy points in his last two, going for 31 or better in his last 4 or 5. If he sees good minutes, he can easily go for 35 plus. This Knicks team is not that great, and they're going to be, throwing Elf Payton on him, who we know does not play that great a defense. I'm totally fine with Eric Bledsoe. I think he's definitely a good tournament play, but I'm definitely going with DAR as my top, under, of course, Luka and Trey.
I think the minutes you brought up when you were speaking about Eric Bledsoe, I think the minutes are like the biggest thing for him, and he has gone over 26 in 4 straight, and that's super encouraging considering all the injuries that we've had to deal with throughout the years and kind of limited Bledsoe's upside just because they don't want to risk him heading into the postseason. So I do love that call for tournaments. Let's break down the rest of the point guard position where I'm interested in your take. Knowing Donovan Mitchell, so you have we can just break down all three Utah guards right now because I think it's an interesting dynamic. Considering we know Donovan Mitchell is playing, you have Mitchell, Moutier, and Jordan Clarkson all in the playbook.
Right.
Do you have any less interest in them knowing Mitchell's playing, or are you fine using all three because they've kind of cemented themselves with a role regardless?
I think it's kind of the latter part there. I think they all kind of have a decent role on the team now. We were seeing all of these guys coexist with each other before Donovan's, sat the last game. He's only sat one game. And that's kind of why I put them in there. Of course, Moutier, I was kind of thinking maybe could, of course, get the start if Donovan once again sat. Jordan getting a lot of time on the second unit. But Moutier, he's still seen 25 or more minutes in his last 3 games, put up 28.3, 25.8, and 32 in those 3. Of course, only one of those games was without Donovan. So I'm still a decent fan of Moutier. I don't exactly love the price as much as I would have if he was out, of course. And then, Jordan, he's right around the same price. He's a little bit more expensive on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. And Moutier is pretty much the same price on both sides. I think Moutier probably has just a little bit more value because I think that he is going to see most of the point guard run. Right. And he's kind of picked it up lately. I think Clarkson is still going to be his secondary role. And I think Donnie is going to probably play a lot of those minutes when Clarkson's on the floor. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword there. But I still think Moutier, and I think Clarkson has fine value, but probably more prone to playing Moutier because he's virtually projected to be unowned. And if he pops off for, 25, 30 fantasy points, he's going to be making you look real good. So that's it's iffy now, obviously.
He does a little more than Clarkson, too. I mean, we're relying on Jordan Clarkson to score the basketball. And if his shot is not falling, at least Moutier can get us some more counting stats, some assists, some rebounds that we're not going to get from Clarkson. So I do agree. If I were to go one of the two, I would lean Moutier as well. Let's move over to shooting guard, where you said it best in your playbook when breaking down James Harden. We don't need to extend and talk and dissect James Harden, he's an elite play. It just is what it is. He gets Memphis. It's a great pace. It's a 240 total we mentioned, and there's no Russell Westbrook. He's going to be the chalk of the slate. If you want to play him, obviously play him. You can play him in tournaments, you play him in cash, you play him wherever you want. But the rest of the position is interesting. We have Devin Booker, who's still priced very, very highly, but he gets a great matchup against Atlanta with no Ricky Rubio. We have Lou Williams in the mid-tier, gets a dreadful Cleveland backcourt in Colin Sexton and Darius Garland, both run away on defense. And there's no Paul George. We mentioned Donovan Mitchell here in the mid-tier. How are you assessing, your shares of Booker and Lou Williams here in the upper to mid-tier?
Absolutely love Devin Booker now, especially with Rubio out. It's just an amazing spot. He's going to eat up the usage. He already gains an extra 3.6%. He's roughly right around 32%, and average right around a 1.2, fantasy point per minute. Really like Booker in this spot. It's going to be a real fast-paced game. Atlanta, not known for their defense. We know that.
Right.
And I don't mind paying the 8.2 on DraftKings, and I really don't mind paying the 8.7 on FanDuel. I mean, FanDuel, you can make just about any lineup you want almost over there. I think in that 8 to 7 to 8 tier, there's not another player in that, salary range that has kind of the upside that Booker has. Dude's been absolutely balling lately. He's gone for 50 3 or 4 times plus. So definitely really liking Devin Booker. I was really high on Lou Williams, obviously. I think his price is pretty fair. He's really cheap on FanDuel. I know he shoots a lot of threes, but he has been picking up his assists a lot lately. And he's just been balling. 36 or more in his last 6 straight, seeing over 30 minutes in his last 6 of 8, and he's carrying almost a 29% usage rate. Kawhi, the only person that's obviously has a higher usage is Kawhi. And I feel like Lou could play a lot of the second unit run on this. I mean, the Cavs are not good, and now they're without Kevin Love. So it's really not good. It's a big spread, and it kind of worries me, to be honest. I think Donovan Mitchell in the next one is going to be the guy that probably nobody plays because he missed last game. He's going to be 0 owned in an absolutely great spot. And I'm totally fine with this. He's gone for 40 or more his last 3 of 6, and I think Donovan Mitchell is going to go 0 owned.
Last time the Suns were without Ricky Rubio, and we saw Devin Booker 9 assists in the primary point guard role. So it's very possible. John and I, a lot of times last year when they did not have a point guard, were hashtag point Booker because he is a fantastic playmaker when the ball is in his hands. He's not just a scorer. He gets a very bad rep because he can score at elite levels, but he is a very good playmaker. We are talking about the Suns, though, Sean. And Elliot Kobo is starting at point guard for the Suns tonight. He has min salary on FanDuel. He has 3,200 on DK. He is projected the highest owned player of the slate outside of James Harden because we know James Harden and Luka are going to garner all the ownership at the spend up. Last time, this was the same game that Booker dished 9 assists. Elliot Kobo started, played 30 minutes, had 17 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal. Do we have Elliot Kobo love at near min salary across the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to, especially in cash. I know we kind of talked about it a little bit before we hopped on the stream here. It's just too cheap. You're able to get a lot of the studs in, of course, especially in cash. In tournaments where I am as a tournament player, I'm more likely prone to play like a Ben McLemore or something like that, a guy that I think has pretty good upside. Not that Okobo doesn't. Obviously, we've seen it. He's averaging right around an 18.3% usage rate without Rubio on the floor, 0.9 fantasy point per minute. So his numbers aren't bad. They're pretty good. You get him, like I said, in a really fast-paced matchup here with the Hawks. He's starting. So I don't see why you wanted to – if you want to get the studs in, especially in cash, you're going to have to play him nonetheless.
I do think you bring up a good point about Ben McLemore, though. I think both he and Eric Gordon are firmly in play here for tournaments. We actually saw Eric Gordon get all the ownership the last time Russell Westbrook sat. and Ben McLemore scored 18 actual points and played over 30 minutes. So I think that is a great call on your behalf. Ben McLemore is the one that made the playbook, and he was the one who went off, even though he came off the bench. So I think an excellent call for Ben McLemore. Eric Gordon also
played 32 minutes too.
Yeah, 32 minutes is nice. I mean, if you're gonna tell me anyone playing 30 minutes in this game environment, I think is honestly in play, just considering that we could see, 250 points by night's end, 260, if everything pops off the way we think it's going to. Let's move over.
500 for minimum, so yeah, he's almost minimum price as well. I mean,
right, it's a steal.
Put that out there.
And only 2% projection over on FanDuel for those playing over there. 4,100, only 2% ownership, which is insane. So we do have Memphis news, which we were talking about earlier. That was really the only news we were waiting for. Kyle Anderson is going to start in the place of the injured Jay Crowder. And Brandon Clark is also going to play. Now, I think this is actually the perfect place to transition over to small forward because Kyle Anderson is, in fact, a small forward. I mean, we could just start there. Any interest in Kyle Anderson, min salary? He's min salary. I don't know but again, the game environment is tremendous. Do we have any love for Kyle Anderson min salary?
The opportunity's there. I mean, obviously, the big part of fantasy is finding the opportunity. The guys who are going to get a little bit more run, get some extra opportunities to obviously score points. That's what you look for. He obviously, as a starter, will get those opportunities. However, I don't know if I'm going to go there or not. They call him slow-mo for a reason.
He is dreadful to watch.
And it's like watching paint dry, watching him play. I'm not sure that I'll go there. There's just now opening up way too much value, and I think that a lot of people are going to gravitate to those players more so, obviously boosting up their ownership. And I believe that I would like to play the guys that are not going to have that kind of ownership. So even though it is a great spot, he is playing against Houston. It is at home. Jay Crowder had decent usage, so I mean, there's going to be usage to be had. But I really like Jonas Valanciunas. I think John Morant gets a pretty good little bump. I know a couple guys in the chat were talking about Dylan Brooks earlier. I think he might even get a little bit of a bump. Also, kind of like DeAnthony Melton a little bit off the bench. He's been actually kind of like lightning in a bottle here lately. In very small minutes, he's been putting up good amounts of fantasy points. So I'm not sure yet. I haven't really had time to process that one, but at the current moment, probably not going to play slow-mo.
Yeah, it's something actually I talked to John about on the podcast last night, playing DeAnthony Melton, possibly because if they are without Jay Crowder, they can just put Dylan Brooks at the 3.
Yep.
Considering Houston is playing a smaller lineup with Eric Gordon and Ben McLemore, likely playing a lot of small forward tonight, they could just very well play Melton and John Morant next to one another. And if we get 25 minutes of DeAnthony Melton, then we're talking about 30-plus fantasy point upside, like we've seen in 2 straight games. So you don't have to sell me on DeAnthony Melton because I think it's a great call for tournaments, especially tournaments. Now, you don't play him in cash because the minutes are too volatile, but for tournaments, I think it's an excellent call.
Sure.
I'm also with you on Anderson. I think we only play him in game stacks. Like if we want to stack that game completely and you want to get Harden, Morant, you want to get all the high-priced guys, you play Kyle Anderson just for a salary saver. But there are some pretty big names here at small forward, Sean, and one of them goes by Giannis Antetokounmpo, and one of them is Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
I think they're probably slightly more of a priority than Kyle Anderson would be.
Absolutely. It's kind of weird seeing Giannis only projected to be about 9% owned on DraftKings, and he's.
I know you are licking your chops at 9% Giannis, but just knowing the tournament guy you are,
it's tough. I mean, it's really tough. Yeah, I mean, it's a great spot. He's at home against the Knicks team that's not very big down low. Julius Randle is about their, Taj Gibson, I get it. He's been playing well lately. He's actually a half-decent defender, but he's getting a little older, and nobody can really guard Giannis. So That one I'm probably likely going to have a share or two of. I'm not sure, exactly how much I'll go, but definitely going to be in play. They are a big favorite, so of course, that is always worrisome. And then Kawhi, I think I'm just fading. I hate to say it, but he's priced right around where he needs 50 plus. The Cavs are terrible. I don't see them sticking around in this game, and Kawhi could play 28 or less minutes. Obviously, if you're going to pay $10K, you want somebody who's going to play 30 plus. Not saying that he can't put up 55 in 28 minutes, but it's highly unlikely, at least in my opinion. I just don't think the Cavs are going to be very good without Kevin Love. Clippers are a very good team, even without Paul George. So I know he sees a massive usage rate without PG, around 39%. Gets a 4.3% boost, 1.54 fantasy point per minute. All the stats are there. I mean, and I'm not trying to argue that at all. But, of course, if I'm going to have to choose, it's definitely going to be Giannis over Kawhi. And if I have to, it's basically going to be pretty much almost anybody over Kawhi at this point, just because I don't trust the Cavs at all.
I agree. I mean, there are a lot of other places I'd rather go. I'd rather go to his teammates, and Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell as well, because their price is more feasible if you don't get 5-6x. If we spend 10K on Kawhi and he gets us 4x, well, we're not going to win money considering there's going to be
especially on a 6-game slate.
Yeah, on a 6-game slate where we have 3 guys likely over 50% that could go for 8 to 10x, and then your lineup's spared. So I couldn't agree more. I think Kawhi, if you want to play him in tournaments, if you're making 20 lineups, you play him in a couple. But if you're playing one lineup, you just don't go there. Plus, small forward is pretty strong tonight. It's not something that we generally say. Kelly Oubre has been torching everyone. And there's no Ricky Rubio tonight, which benefits Oubre. And Chris Middleton is another guy who is rolling right now, and he gets a really poor Knicks defense. I'll even throw Joe Ingles in there in a nice pace-up spot for Utah. This position is really strong that I don't think we need to go spend all our salary on.
No, I mean, I really like Kelly Oubre. I mean, he's the cover of my example lineups. I've got him in a few of those. I just really like the fact that he's going to be 12% owned. I mean, I know he's almost 8K on DraftKings, but just like you said, he's gone for 40, 50, and 53 fantasy points in his last 3 road games. The pace is going to be amazing. It's going to be really fast. We all know that Atlanta has struggled against defending the small forward spot. And, yeah, Oubre has just been really good. 56.3 fantasy points in his last outing. Yeah, I'm just a big fan of Kelly Oubre. Chris Middleton is very interesting. Obviously, if you think the Knicks stick around, he's definitely a play you'd probably want to look at. He's virtually going to be unowned. He's less than 10% projected. His price is fair. And he's went for 41, 52, and 42 in his last, 4 or more games. 40 or more in his last 3. Played 28 or more minutes in his last 8 straight. The Knicks are allowing the 5th most of that to the small forward spot over the last 10. It's a very friendly game, especially, for most of the Bucks. So if you are stacking that game, you absolutely have to have Chris Middleton. There's no doubt about that. And then, Joe Ingles, I think, is nobody's going to remember Ingles either. I mean, do we kind of think that he'll get a little bit of that usage taken away with Mitchell back? Sure. Will he go for 42 fantasy points like he did last game? Maybe not. But, again, it is a pace-up spot here in Brooklyn. I don't mind him at all. Right around the 6K range. So it's a friendly price tag, I think, especially over on FanDuel at 5.4. I think you got to play him on FanDuel. I think he's going to play decent minutes. He's going to see 28 or more. And, it's a good spot. So I think Joe Ingles is definitely a fine play on FanDuel at 5.4. And that's kind of, Tim Hardaway Jr. was my last one in there. And I think he's just kind of a pair up with Luka because, I really like that game as well. So he's been playing really good lately. Seen 30, 32, and 30 minutes in his last 3. Put up 28, 35, 20, and 27 fantasy points in his last 4. We know Golden State's not very good on the defensive end. So really like the Tim Hardaway at the cheaper price as well.
I mean, just to circle back to Ingles, because you did mention, obviously some usage is going to be sucked away from Ingles to Mitchell. But we saw for an 8-game stretch in December, Ingles went over 30 fantasy points every game. And Donovan Mitchell was playing in every one of them. Right.
Yeah, still getting his.
Right. So, I mean, 5,400 is a great price in a nice pace-up spot. Let's move over to power forward, Sean. Not my favorite position tonight. And generally, power forward has been a strong point for us, whether it's been spend-ups or, we've had a lot of value at the power forward position on a nightly basis tonight. I don't feel that to be very true tonight. I think from the value aspect, Amari Spellman is going to be the clear-cut play, especially on FanDuel, where you're going to find him at 4,600. They are apparently going to re-sign Marquise Chris to a two-way deal that has not been finalized. Maybe it does get finished prior to the game. I can't imagine Marquise Chris strayed too far from the Bay Area where they are playing their home games. So, could he be in uniform tonight? Maybe it's a 10:30 game. If he's not, Spellman is probably the guy we want in the value tier here at power forward. I mean, you have Dario Saric written down and Taj Gibson, but they're both more tournament plays, right?
Absolutely. I really didn't even want to put Taj Gibson in here, but the last two games he's been playing really well. It's definitely a risk. However, he's been playing really well in the last two games. Played almost 30 minutes in both games, 26 and 30, I believe. He's put up 29 and 30 fantasy points. So at 4.3, 4.6, it's got some decent value there, especially against Milwaukee, who we know, Brook Lopez doesn't exactly love to hang around the rim, and that's Taj Gibson's specialty. So, he could easily pop up with a double-double, and I wouldn't be shocked. Sark is definitely a tournament play. It's a good spot, obviously, against Atlanta. And he's played 18, 21, and 23 minutes over his last three. He hasn't exactly been productive, but we've seen Dario Saric be really productive. We've seen the upside. We've seen him put up 40 fantasy points or more a couple different times. I know with Ayton back, he's kind of taken up that second unit. They put him on the bench last game and started Saric, I believe. They've continued to start Aaron Baines at the center spot. So Ayton's kind of getting a little bit of a run at both of those spots, I think, on the second unit. But, yeah, I totally agree with Spellman. He's looking to be a little chalky on FanDuel, but for the price, you kind of have to go there. One that we didn't really talk about was Julius Randle, a guy that I really like as well tonight. He continues to be underpriced. I mean, 7.5K on DK I think is more than fair. He's went over 35 fantasy points in his last 8 straight. He's gone for 45 or more in his last 5 of 8. The Bucks have been pretty generous to the power forward spot as well. So Julius Randle, I think obviously if you're playing that game, you got to have some Julius Randle. And then of course John Collins at the top. I don't know how much I'll play John Collins, if I even play him at all. We know the upside. He's went for 44 or more in the 2 prior games with Young in the game. I kind of made a note about that in the playbook, how I think that it does help him that Trae Young is back. Trae dishes him a lot of assists, gets him in good positions. So that obviously pulls some defenders off of him as well. So it's a good spot for Collins. I'm just not sure I love the price.
I'm interested to know why you didn't include your boy Jaren Jackson Jr. in the playbook. Is it the looming PJ Tucker defense that scares you? Because we've talked about that on a couple occasions where you and I are kind of in agreement where PJ Tucker we know is a good defender. Is that the reason? Because you do love Jaren Jackson generally.
I am a Jaren Jackson truther, and I think I do have him in one of the example lineups. So, I mean, I don't totally dislike him. And if I could have went back now and knowing that Kevin Love would have been out, he would have been in the playbook.
Right.
It was kind of one of those deals where I had my top guys and Love was in there, who I had to remove. And then I felt like I already had the value. So I felt like him at almost 7K was just one of those plays where I was kind of like, I could go either way. Like, I don't love it. I don't hate it. And of course, it's a good spot. It's Houston, but PJ Tucker, I got a feeling that, James Harden will drive the lane a lot. We know that Jaren does happen to get into foul trouble every once in a while. He was in foul trouble in the last game and was pissing everybody off because he, didn't have any fantasy points and still ended up with 38. But if he gets 2 or 3 quick fouls, it's all she wrote for the first half, and that's just not something I feel like stomaching tonight. So that's kind of why I had to leave him. Like I said, if Kevin Love would have been ruled out earlier, it might have been a different story.
Thoughts on Austin Rivers starting in point guard tonight for the Houston Rockets?
Just another person to pass.
just another person to pass to James Harden. I love that.
Yep.
He did start the other day for Russell Westbrook. He played 27 minutes, gave us 10, 3, and 2. So not something that we really
won't be there.
Yeah, we don't really need to go there. Just thought I'd throw that. Ben McLemore. They could probably play that James Harden guy at point guard. I think he might know how to handle the ball a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit. Sean, let's finish it off at center, where it just seems like a pretty straightforward position tonight. We don't have any elite spend up, like we do at pretty much every other position. I guess the one guy I would be interested in your take, and we could just throw him in the mix because he's a mid-tier guy. We have the likes of Ayton, Jonas Valanciunas, Montrezl Harrell, Tristan Thompson. I think this is clear-cut, simple. I guess my one question would be, where is Clint Capella in the playbook?
I had a feeling that was coming. And, I think that Val is going to be pretty tough down low. I just didn't know if I wanted to pay for his price. I felt like I could pay down and pay up at other places. So that's one of the big reasons I didn't have him in the playbook. I know we always try to say, hey, we can't put everybody in the playbook.
Right.
We know that. And I'm trying my best to try to narrow my plays down as much as possible now. And again, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think he's a terrible play, because I don't. I think he's a decent play. But for me, I just didn't want to pay the price. And I think that I like Jonas just quite a bit more. And obviously, Jonas is projected to be less than 9% on both sides. And I think that he's been playing really, really well lately. 29, 30 minutes, of course, is encouraging in his last two. 38 and 62.8 fantasy points in his last two games. So we know the upside. I just feel like for a tournament player like myself, I really would rather play Jonas. And then I really like Harrell as well. So Ayton was kind of just one of those fill-in spots because he was just up at the top. I feel like he's in a great spot. It is Atlanta. They've struggled very, very mightily against the center spot, and Alex Len looks to be out. I think that he's still a pretty fantastic play under 8K. As long as he's going to see the minutes, I think Ayton can do anything, most of the time. And then, of course, Harrell, like I said, is just a big spot that I like off the bench for the Clippers. I know I'd said that I'd feel kind of worried. I would feel more comfortable playing Harrell at his price than I would paying for Kawhi. I mean, 100%. There's just no two ways about that. We know Harrell is likely going to end the game, finish the game, especially if it's even halfway close. If it's a 10 or 15-point game, you can still see Harrell close it out. And then, of course, Tristan Thompson on the flip side. He's been seeing over 30 minutes a game. We've seen him go for 65 a couple games ago. We know he has decent upside. And he's a double-double, threat pretty much any night. And we know the Clippers struggle against the center spot. So I don't mind paying down a little bit for Tristan Thompson. I think he's probably I hate to say he's a decent cash play, but on this slate, I think he could be.
I mean, there's no Kevin Love either.
Exactly.
So, I mean, he is going to swallow up every possible rebound imaginable. I mean, speaking of Cleveland, I think it's worth mentioning Larry Nance is probable. There's no official word that he'll play, but he is probable. Any Larry Nance love on FanDuel, he has $4,100. DraftKings, he is $3,300.
Yeah, on DraftKings, it's going to be hard to not like it if he's playing. It's going to be hard to not like it if he plays on both.
Right.
Especially with the power forward spot losing Kevin Love. Especially on FanDuel. I do think that you can look that way. Obviously, he has missed his last 8 games, so that's something you really need to take into consideration when talking about Larry Nance. We've seen him flop in some pretty chalky spots before.
Yes, we have.
We've also seen him succeed in those spots. So It's kind of an up and down thing. Obviously, it would be a good match, but, he's likely going to be matched up with Kawhi Leonard or, JaMychal Green, who it wouldn't be as good of a matchup for him as well. So likely for me, I will probably go elsewhere.
That is fair. Sean, before we get out of here, it is a 7:30 roster lock, so we have nearly an hour, about 50 minutes until lock. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Nope, I'm ready. I'm good. I'm ready to go.
As always, it was a pleasure. Big thanks to John and Pemba. By the way, guys, John really wanted me to say this earlier. He was begging me. He was messaging me nonstop when we were talking about Kyle Anderson. He said, stop talking about my favorite player, Kyle Anderson, like that. I'm rostering him in all formats.
He's a big slow-mo fan.
He is a big slow-mo fan. That was what he was messaging me. I have the screenshots to prove it if anyone wants to call me out. But big thanks to him. Big thanks to Sean as always, and we'll catch you guys in subscriber chat. We'll catch you guys on Twitter, and we are out.